So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to SoConnect's second webinar of the year. We've had one in-person event as well. And today we're going to be talking about securing the hybrid workforce strategies for protecting your business in the remote world that we all now live in. I've opened the Q&A section. So if anyone has questions at all as we go throughout slides, stick a question in and either we'll answer it at that point during the slide or at the next break, or at the end. We'll also hopefully have a bit of time to have some more Q&As at the end of the presentation. So moving on, some introductions. My name's Gordon Sayers. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for SoConnect. Having grown my own MSP over a number of years, my business was acquired and became part of SoConnect 2 years ago. And most of the team that were with my business are now part of the larger SoConnect family. Our strategy is cloud first and security first, both at the same time. And cybersecurity should underpin everything that every business does because the threats are out there. And of course, the home working that we were all forced into at the start of COVID, or certainly accelerated, has just increased the risks out there. And that's the kind of main reason behind the webinar today and what we're going to focus on. Euan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Euan Stewart, CTO at SoConnect. Similar background to Gordon, through the acquisition from IT Centric into SoConnect. My main responsibility is to manage the IT roadmap and the cybersecurity strategy for our customers.
Thank you. So I got some information slides coming up that probably won't massively surprise anyone other than the numbers. Before COVID-19 came along, approximately 1 in 10 working adults reported working from home on a regular basis. Today, only 3 years later, 1 in 5 employees work from home at least 1 day a week. And we, like many others out there, are offering a hybrid of generally 2 to 3 days a week in the office and the rest at home, which employees now almost expect where the industry allows it. So the remote working and security, remote working skyrocketed by 44% in the last 5 years, as per the last stats that we just talked about, resulting in increased data breaches for many companies, because the home working environment is generally less secure than the business working environment. One of the things that we provide for our customers are firewalls that will protect an office of however many people. You don't have the same level of security in your home routers, and this is something that really has almost been missed by a lot of businesses, and it's our job as a managed service provider to highlight the areas of risk and what can be done to mitigate that. 1 in 5 businesses, it's 20%, that suffered a cyber attack said the breach originated with a remote worker. So again, that's a slightly scary statistic, but these are validated data that we've got from good sources in the industry, and again underpins a lot of the advice that we give our customers, and has underpinned the changing and developing cybersecurity strategy that Euan spent a lot of time working on to ensure that we are at the very least informing our customers of the most appropriate services and security products to protect their staff, their devices, and their data, in particular for those that are working at home. Around 65% of cyber criminals have leveraged spear phishing emails as their primary attack vector, and it's one of the areas that we see most commonly being successful, unfortunately, for our our customer base, managed IT service companies like ours, we can never remove risk entirely. All we can do is reduce risk by putting certain services in place and educating customers and users, that being a big part of what we do. 44% of businesses don't provide cybersecurity training to their staff on the threats of not just working from home, but just emerging threats are out there. And it's amazing the difference just a little bit of cybersecurity training makes to educate users into what to look out for and just to reduce that risk of a compromise. Because most often that compromise ends up in a financial loss to the associated business. Why cybersecurity matters. Most cybersecurity incidents are untargeted. So unprotected businesses are at greater risk, or those that don't pay attention or invest in their cybersecurity. All companies hold sensitive information, some significantly more than others, and all those companies, so all of us, have a responsibility to keep the data that we manage on behalf of our customers and suppliers safe. That is a legal responsibility, and again, it's something we talk about a lot at SoConnect. Cyber criminals are out to make money. It's a business, whether we like it or not, and whether we consider it to be an ethical business. Of course, it isn't. But ultimately, they want to get the biggest bang for the buck, and the amount of different things that are out there, different ransomware as a service and other things, really are just showing how the criminal landscape is changing significantly. And MSPs, IT companies like ours, are at the forefront of trying to educate our customers and our users to the threats that are out there. Euan, I don't know if you've got anything you want to just add to that overall picture.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is maybe talking about, we've talked about it before, Gordon, is the kind of the bank robber analogy. In the good old days, a long time ago, bank robbers were people who robbed banks, as it says in the term. Whereas nowadays, robbers can be very specific in terms of who they choose. It doesn't have to be a bank. It's now they go for the customer instead. And it's just making sure, what we're trying to do is make sure that the awareness is given to businesses, that the information and the data they hold and the processes they hold can be hijacked by a bad actor, and understanding what ramifications that has to businesses and what that might look like if you're compromised, if you're breached, because the numbers speak for themselves, and it's just about making sure that businesses understand where their weaknesses might be in terms of their cybersecurity, because it's such a changing landscape that there's proper thought put into these things, and that's where we can assist and help with that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good analogy to use the bank. So every business must consider that they are effectively a data bank, and any of the data that they have, will be of interest to some of the cyber criminals out there. So just puts more, and hopefully really brings to the fore that responsibility to protect the data that you've got. So protecting your business in a remote world. 5 areas that we're going to talk about today. There are more, but these are the ones that we speak to our customers about a lot, and these are ones that are seen as being really crucial in the current model, in the current cybersecurity model, if you like. So we'll use a zero trust model. We'll go into more detail on that in the following slides, but this is, if it's a term that's new to most people in a webinar, it's something you're going to hear more and more about over the next few years. Originally an enterprise level solution, but one that's being applied to more and more to the small business community. know who can access your network. Have more visibility and knowledge of the people that have access to the data on your network. And networks are now no longer just the office that you have a bunch of people sitting in. Your network is can be spread across hundreds of miles, depending on where your users are actually working from home. So know who can access your network, and that puts a bit more hard work into actually tying that down. Upgrade your antivirus protection. Antivirus, by its very name, it's a kind of reactive bit of software. It does its job and it's effective, but the newer solutions that are out there are a little bit more intelligent and offer a better level of protection. Again, we'll go into all of these in the following slides. Train your staff. I think it's incumbent upon every business to give their staff training, both to protect those businesses, but also to help those staff protect themselves when they're at home, because we've all heard the horror stories of people losing money, life savings, etc., to scams, both at home and in the workplace. And enhance your backup strategy. Think about backup. There's been a long, I think, misapprehension that when you put things in the cloud, you don't need to back up anymore. You absolutely do. It's recommended by Microsoft and all the big vendors that you have your data backed up to a third-party provider in case they ever have an issue that they can't restore the data. So again, these are all things that we'll be covering over the next few slides. Euan, I'll pass over to you to talk a bit more about the Zero Trust model.
So Zero Trust is a security framework requiring all users, whether they're inside or out the network, to be authenticated, authorized, and continuously validated for security configuration. And Zero Trust has been added to Cyber Essentials 2023, the new guidelines, just to start to bring awareness to everybody about what it actually is. Gone are the days where a traditional office perimeter was enough to prevent breaches. So all your data, you had your Exchange, your files, all your IP within one singular place. Obviously, that's changed now. With SaaS solutions and cloud and agile working is meant that data has kind of not become fragmented, but it's in multiple places. So, thinking about your where the data was before, it was kind of think of it like in a castle. It was under one defense. That's now changed, and Zero Trust is now starting to address those issues. Like many things, Zero Trust is an enterprise framework, and anything else that came from the enterprise world comes down to the SME level, and we can start to translate that for kind of small businesses to understand how they can adopt that. It's all about giving users the least amount of privileges that they require. So if you think about your employees in your workspace, it's making sure that they don't have more privileges than what they actually require to do their day-to-day work. There are exceptions, and that's where approval processes, things like that, come into play to deal with those exceptions. But you don't want everybody in your organization to be an administrator. Is basically what they're saying, which is obvious, but is making sure that in order to do their day-to-day, they don't have any more administrative requirements than what they have. And just in case they're compromised, if the user is compromised, then obviously that could result in a very serious breach if they've got an administrator rights. And Zero Trust will make sure that advanced threats and insider attacks are mitigated by distrusting everything first and going through a process to making sure that all devices inside the network go through, like I mentioned, like an authenticated and authorized process to make sure that everything is validated before it gets access to the systems and data that it needs to.
Excellent. So on to the more explanation, hopefully in a language that everyone can understand to a level about again what Zero Trust does. I'll let you continue.
So how would Zero Trust be implemented practically into a business? So the first thing you'd want to do is to identify all the accounts that you have across all your platforms and applications. So that could be things like Microsoft 365 or Google Workplace, Monday.com, your HR systems, all sorts. There's a lot of applications now that businesses have to do their day-to-day work, and it's to make sure that all the accounts that shouldn't be there are removed. Once you've done that, and that accounts for things like former employees, temp users, contractors, etc. And then once you've done that, is to make sure that multi-factor authentication is applied to all those authorized accounts that remain after that process. So not just applying that to your core applications such as Microsoft 365, but yeah, all the other line of business applications that your business might use. Next thing is to verify all the devices that connect to your IT resources and networks. And ask questions like, is there anyone using a personal or private device to access your systems? So, is anybody using a mobile phone or potentially a home computer to potentially access your systems, which might not fall under the compliance that your company might want to implement? And if a device was lost or stolen, how easy would it be to access the information on it? And we see this repeatedly on the news and other media outlets. That's a serious question, and it's generally worth considering to really question if a device was lost or stolen. How confident would you be that if it was fallen into the wrong hands, how safe would it be? Next thing is to segment your network. So this basically means don't put all your eggs in one basket. A good example of this is to make sure in your office infrastructure, for example, that your guest Wi-Fi is separated from your business network. Now, it's a kind of obvious statement, but it's still worth to be said, because it's something we still actually see, is to make sure that anybody who perhaps comes in for the day or maybe joins your Wi-Fi, you've maybe got your guest network open for people to easily connect to, is to make sure that's completely segregated from your business networks, i.e. your workstations and your servers and things like that. And there's other advanced areas that we can go into, but again, it's worth begging the question to figure out whether you've got that in place already. Implementing a user security training tool to keep users up to date and tested on their knowledge. This is the kind of fastest growing area that we've seen, to make sure that their users are kept up to date. Monitoring your systems to identify any suspicious activity that's going on your network, whether it's through logins on your identities, whether it's Microsoft 365 or your network traffic, and look for those anomalies and potential threats. Because as IT has evolved over the years, the systems have become more and more complex behind the scenes, and it's better to bring that all under kind of one banner to monitor all of that. And the last thing is to make sure you've got a proper backup solution in place that's resilient and tested. And again, that's been said for a long time. That's not anything new, but it's still worth making sure that business is aware of, making sure that's their last line of defense.
Thanks, Euan. So yeah, really good just advice there, and an indication of a lot of the behaviours that all businesses should either be putting in place or certainly thinking about to improve the security, mitigate risk, reduce risk. That's all you can do. But the more of these things that you put in place, the less likelihood there is of a breach of some kind in your organization. So who can access your network? Again, this is something Euan's got a lot of knowledge in, because he's been investigating and developing our cyber strategy. So I'll leave this one to you, Euan.
So privileged access management is, like I mentioned earlier, is to making sure that all your employees within your businesses don't have any more admin privileges than they require. So they need to have the sufficient privileges to do their day-to-day effectively. And it's making sure that there's a process in place, an approval process, whether that's through a solution, or you've got a proper internal solution to make sure that those are tracked and monitored as well. Very, very important, because what's been found is if you implement a proper privileged access management, it will actually reduce the breaches. So instead of everybody in your company having administrator level, perhaps only one or two have got that privileges, or hopefully none have that, and there's separate accounts to deal with that. It has been proven to implement business efficiency. So instead of getting caught up in, I need access to this, or somebody was going to give me access to this 2 weeks ago in order for me to do my job, that actually has been proven to help improve efficiency, because as business owners, you get an overall view of what your staff actually need access to. And it might generate internal discussions which lead to improved processes. And that's, as far as we're concerned, that's a very, very good thing. And the last important point there is you're given the correct access. So, based on your role, whatever it is in your business, determined by your management team, users are given exactly what they need access to and no more. And that's a really, really important area when it comes to zero trust, like we mentioned earlier. And it's all about maintaining and managing that going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just say that the landscape, the IT landscape's changed massively in the last 5 years, and whether or not COVID had actually happened, we would probably be having this conversation anyway, because more and more users are moving to the cloud. All COVID-19 did was speed up the process a bit, and the attitudes generally that we're talking about here, again, no matter the size of the business, the sooner that these are implemented, and the approach and the thought process to what people are allowed to do and how they're allowed to do it, sooner we get that changed to kind of just make sense, then the fewer breaches we will start to see across the small business community, because that's one of the most highly targeted communities, and the fewer business will be affected. And again, managed service providers, IT support companies, whatever you want to call them, that's all we're really interested in. We want to reduce risk and make sure that we're offering you the right services to do that and to be able to run your business properly. So identity and access management. Again, it's an area where Euan's got significant knowledge and experience. He's already talked about multi-factor authentication, role-based access, and identity management. That these are all terms that, again, you'll start to hear more and more over the next few years. And the more that we all hear about them, and that you read about them in webinars and start implementing some of them. All good practices to put in place to improve your business efficiency, as well as reducing risk, and just generally put your business on a stronger footing. Because the better any business is in terms of what it has in place to protect the business and the employees, the more efficient and potentially and likely the more successful you're going to be as a business. Don't know if there's anything you want to touch on, Euan, on the three items there.
Yeah, so identity and access management is still an area that's not got the awareness it requires, as far as I'm concerned. And it's probably the most important layer, I would say, in terms of the defense that you have, and the stack that you have on top of everything else, like email filtering and endpoint protection and everything else. And the main reason is, we've got more identities than we actually realize. And I would propose that if you were to list all your known identities online, I'll guarantee that you won't be able to list them all. And when you think about that, you think there's only one of me, but you think of all your accounts that you might have online, whether it's Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and everything that your business use. You start to generate a lot of imprints that you might have online, and they might have many different passwords. Many of them might not be secure. Many of these accounts that you have online have potentially been compromised, not through your fault, but through the third party. And it's just being aware of that your online presence is probably more substantial than what you think. And having MFA on all of those identities and a good strong password is, like I said, is the best defense that you have in your defense stack, alongside even above things like EDR and email and other things like we're going to talk about. So it's a very, very critical area. Implementing MFA across all your business applications and services, ensure that not any employee has more privileges to systems and data that they need. It's two hugely effective practices you can have, like I said, within your defense stack. And on top of this, it's simplifying your IT. So if you can take advantage of things like single identity systems, whether it's single sign-on on Microsoft 365 and Azure, or it's a third-party solution such as OneLogin or Okta to kind of combine all your identities into one, it makes IT teams' jobs easier, such as ourselves, to take care of those identities and maintain them, reduces processes, reduces likelihood of human error, and overall reduces the risk.
Super, thanks, Euan. On to the next slide. So this is again a term that we've been aware of within our industry for a while, EDR, so endpoint detection and response. So even the name hopefully will get across to everybody that it's more than just antivirus software. It's not just a bit of software that looks and waits to see a threat on your machine and then deals with it, because a lot of the modern viruses are designed to act in such a fast way that once your traditional antivirus identifies the fact there's a virus executing itself in your machine, it's already gone and done a huge amount of damage, either just on that machine or on other machines on the network. So endpoint detection response built to supplement endpoint security with increased detection, investigation, and response. So this is intelligent software sitting there, not only waiting to respond to threats on your device, but reacting to threats on other devices on the network as well. It's the next generation of device protection. So I'm trying not to say antivirus software, but the next generation of device protection. Unfortunately, because it's new generation software, it's generally a little bit more expensive, but it will, again, like a lot of the tools we're talking about, will reduce risk significantly of an attack that is maybe happening, but it will reduce that. It reduces the risk to the other devices in the network. Clever enough to isolate a device on a network if it identifies that there's a virus running there, so that it can't go and infect other machines, for example. And we're starting to deploy it to more and more customers. We're using it ourselves, of course, and it's a discussion. A lot of these things come down to what a customer perceives as a big enough threat, and all we can do is advise. Some customers will jump onto this sort of solution straight away because they understand it, and it's maybe the industry they're in. Others, depending on financially where they are, sometimes will maybe hold back a little bit and wait, often until there's been a breach of some kind, and then they implement the security strategy. What we try to do is avoid that by holding webinars like this to explain the benefits of all these different tools, so customers are as well versed and informed as possible. Euan, have you got anything else you'd like to add on EDR?
Yeah, so EDR does have the nickname of next-gen antivirus, next-generation antivirus, as Gordon mentioned. And the reason for that is this is because traditional antivirus is outdated in terms of the way that it handles the threats. So it can still identify the threats to a certain degree, But what EDR does is basically the next steps on top of that. So it starts to initiate the steps that we would take as human beings to deal with those threats. So once they're detected, as part of that response, then there's a certain sequence of events that will take on behalf of what we would normally do if we were using traditional antivirus. So traditional antivirus will detect, a threat, ransomware, etc., based on a signature. So it's basically a known up. So as antivirus gets updated, its signatures gets updated with known threats. It's then aware of that. Whereas EDR, endpoint detection and response, is trained using machine learning. So not only does it have a signature capability, it starts to analyze exactly what's going on the workstation itself, but it starts to basically work as a team. And that's the key bit is if you've got more than one device on the network, as an infection starts to spread, it will obviously jump from workstation to workstation, and this is where EDR can really step in and deal with those threats on endpoints. Because EDR is built with a level of intelligence and machine learning that AV simply doesn't have, unfortunately. So this gives EDR a much higher likelihood to detect these threats and automatically respond to the threat and take the first steps, whether it's malware, whether it's ransomware or something similar, from expanding out and affecting other key infrastructure to the business and effectively crippling it from being able to operate. So it's a really key area.
Thanks, Euan. So again, you've covered some of these, or most of this, in our explanation. Yeah, I mean, this is again, the benefits of the software and the platform and being more intelligent and having the ability to, the software itself having the ability to identify unusual behavior. So every machine will be a little bit different, and the software on the machine will be able to identify if something unusual is happening in terms of network traffic, and that's the big benefit, and it will become the standard that everyone will be expected to have on the machines very quickly over the next couple of years, we think, and all antivirus software that's out there will just need to evolve into an EDR type solution to keep up with the ever emerging threats that are out there in the workplace. I don't think you need to.
Yeah, I was going to say EDR gives great visibility across the endpoints. It helps us identify malicious activity very quickly. So traditional AV, even the portals that we have just now, are not designed to inform human beings as soon as possible, whereas EDR is. So again, reducing the time to impact. It's got the capability to detect suspicious threats, which makes it a proactive solution. So it will generate alerts even if it suspects that there's something going on a device that shouldn't be, and it gives IT teams like ourselves a head start in dealing with the possible threat. EDR also gives us the capability gives us insights into where the threats came from, which is a key part as well. So antivirus doesn't give us the history and where a threat came from, whereas EDR, it will give us basically a roadmap to where it came from originally, to give us the source to potentially plug that source from hopefully preventing further breaches on other devices. And yeah, the fact that EDR does this automatically can save precious time dealing with a live issue if it does occur. And the final thing is EDR will take the first steps to mitigate and isolate devices. If a threat is detected, it will isolate and disconnect the device from the network, protecting it from the rest of the network, the operational network, whether it's in the office, whether it's home, remote, and it will allow the IT team to do something called a rollback and get it back to some kind of safe state for the user to resume operating on that device properly.
Excellent, Euan. Thank you for that insightful input. Just a bit better knowledge than I've got on this, and I've now spent a lot of time researching it. So Your hybrid workforce is your biggest security risk. Again, feel like the bearer of bad news often in the IT industry. So ransomware attacks doubled during 2022, and that trend is growing. I mentioned this earlier. So ransomware as a service. So lots of you will have heard of a lot of these as a service terms that you hear in the IT industry. We've got software as a service, platform as a service. Well, you can now get ransomware as a service. Criminals can go and buy a pre-packaged ransomware threat and then deploy it and see how they get on. Really quite a scary move forward in the criminal world, because it is entirely the criminal world, and they can do all of this from sitting behind a laptop. Phishing attacks count for more than 80% of breaches, and these can often be the most disruptive to a business. So again, unfortunately, we've got first-hand experiences of this, and the impact on the business, even aside from financial, is downtime. So if you have a number of users that can't work for an hour, half a day, what is the cost to your business of that? And reputational damage. If you have a breach and emails get spewed out from an account that caused somebody else to get breached, that reputational damage can be really disruptive. Remote workers may not have the same level of physical security. They almost certainly won't. We see laptops getting stolen from customers. Often it's in the pub or on the train, but we have to be ready to deal with that as the managed service provider. But devices getting left in cars, at home, your BT or Virgin or Sky supplied router, it's got really very basic level of security on them, and are often significantly easier to get into. So if somebody wants to try and get into a home network, they probably can. Some of the more sophisticated attackers out there, certainly much easier than they can in office. And of course, hybrid workers may have and almost many will have access to sensitive company information and networks from outside the office. And unless you've got really strict controls in place to monitor that, then you've got lost control and access to what's happening with that data. And that is something that I personally don't think enough companies really put enough thought into. Unfortunately, it does cost. There's more time and process, but you need to invest in the security on your networks across the board to, again, be able to identify what people are doing and where and when, just so you know where your data is going, so that you've got as much control over it as possible, because that data is often other people's information. So just a couple of extra little bits of information. 45% of the world's email is spam. So the billions of emails that get sent out every day, 45% of that is spam. So if we could remove that, apart from anything else, we'd all have a much easier life. But within that spam are the phishing emails, and a cyber criminal can send 1,000, 100,000 phishing emails. He only needs to be lucky once to potentially, get a big payout. Whereas we've got to be lucky every time as users, because within SoConnect, we are users and we manage and support and protect all of our users. So we only have to be unlucky once to potentially be compromised. So it's just something that's really worth considering on a continual basis for any business as the business grows and develops, and thinking about the devices that people use to be able to do their jobs. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to all of that, Euan?
Just that obviously ransomware is still on the rise. Again, like it says there, it's doubled obviously in 2022. That's obviously going to continue again. A huge threat to particularly the SME space. employees working at home carry more risk of devices being lost or stolen. It's not really something that a lot of businesses think about now with the hybrid working that we've got now, which is great for a work-life balance point of view, but from a risk point of view, we need to remember that you're taking a business asset home at the end of the day. And, just got to make sure that, like we've mentioned already, those kind of key questions are always being asked. On some sort of basis, whether it's annual or biannual, to making sure that that the devices are under some sort of protection and governance, to make sure that if something was to happen to any of those, that there's something in place that would protect them from that. And the last thing is to make sure that businesses are now monitoring what's going on with their applications. So not necessarily what the user is doing from a privacy point of view. This is more to make sure that users are logging in from where they need to be logging in from home, etc. They're not logging in from different countries, and they're not moving about, and potentially logging in from places which are susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks and things like that, where potentially information could be intercepted. So it's just to make sure that all these kind of areas are kind of being thought about.
Cool, thank you. So the human challenge. People make mistakes. 90% of successful data breaches involve human error. People are targeted. So 36% of breaches involve phishing attacks. Often these are aimed specifically at financial controllers, business owners, leaders within businesses, because they've got the authority level to be able to give permission for payments to be made, and it's often these permissions that are these emails from people that are the ones that are get involved in phishing attacks. Compliance is essential in this day and age. I think everybody, in our opinion, every company should have Cyber Essentials certification, because it means that they've got an awareness of the risks, and they have had IT professionals look at their network, look at their devices, give them the advice, and there's just an awareness there. Cyber Essentials gives you what we consider to be actually just the basic level of security to protect your businesses. But at least there's some form of compliance, because for many businesses, anyone can start a business and put a bunch of IT equipment into place, buy some subscriptions to Office 365, get a website built, and off they go. And if there's no compliance at all there, those are the sort of businesses that very quickly can become compromised. The larger you get, then you can move into international standards organizations. So ISO 27001 is for security. You have GDPR, of course, and a lot of retail operations use, the PCI and DSS compliance. These are all there for a reason, and most of those reasons are to reduce risk, either to the financial platforms that are serving those organizations, but also to the businesses themselves. Yeah, I think for that particular slide, again, I think if anyone takes anything away from this slide, it's just the human challenge. Be aware that computers only make mistakes if they're programmed wrongly, or software. People make mistakes, and as long as we all acknowledge that, then we understand where to start and trying to mitigate those risks. And you mentioned this earlier, so training staff in cybersecurity. So user awareness training is a big part of the solution. We have internal training within SoConnect. We use a platform called USecure, and once a month, everyone in the business will get a questionnaire that they go through, and it covers different topics every month. And all of this is educating even us as IT professionals. In a lot of it is just remedial training. It's just reminding us of the things that we should be aware of. But some of it will hopefully be new learning for members of the staff as well. So security awareness training calculates, reduces, and monitors human cyber risk. So that can only ever protect your business, especially when we look back to the last slide when we talked about human beings being the challenge. So you've got cyber awareness, as I've said, with training programs, phishing resilience. So also happens within our business. Everybody in the business will get targeted with a phishing test, and we're aware of what we need to do if we get one of these emails. So if we miss it, then again, the training that then comes out the following month might be a bit more targeted on that particular user or on phishing awareness, so that they can be aware of it. Again, cyber awareness training prevents early threats with, breach prevents early threats with ongoing dark web monitoring. So the software will look for users in the business, look for their details appearing on the dark web, so that again, if that is a potential threat to the business, we can do something about it. And the policy management, also again, you get guidance on how you can put IT policies in place, in particular for training, which for small businesses that can be really, really useful. Small businesses don't often get access to pre-populated policies. So if you get a bit of software that allows you to do that, you get all your team to sign up to this policy management or these policies. Your team are more aware of the threats, and they're aware of the responsibility they have to keep up their learning to reduce risk. Euan, again, anything you want to add to that from your involvement in our own internal security training?
Yes, from the learning point of view, regular and up-to-date training for employees, and this will build over time. Ensuring that there's engagement, and the questionnaire results will demonstrate that over time. So you should get like what's called a gap analysis to find out where you are, and then as time progresses, you should see that score improving. The phishing training, sending out regular and varied emails as phishing tests to see where staff need improved. We would also want to see good engagement from employees identifying these emails as well. So not just from making sure that people don't click on them, is making sure that people click on them and report them back to a centralized place to identify that staff are flagging these as phishing emails. That's what we would want to see. Breach detection, ongoing check with the dark web to make sure that potentially leaked information, credentials, etc., either through a compromise directly or indirectly, whether it's been through something that's happened in the past with your own business or with a third party that you hold an identity with, is very, very important to make sure you're proactive about that. And in policy management, implement a ground rules of your IT, basically. So make it clear where the boundaries are, and why they're there as well. So so it's not just a hard wall to make sure people abide by them, but it's actually to explain why they're there, and then keep that under kind of fairly regular review, and keep staff engaged with it as well. As that makes a massive difference for the overall strategy.
Yeah, and I think just finishing this slide now, for a business, if you can demonstrate to your staff that you're taking the cyber threat seriously and their cyber training, I think that increases confidence of the staff in the business as well, and that the business awareness is there, and that overall confidence in where the business is going as a direction. I think it does bring benefits that might not be obvious to some. So backup strategy, again, we mentioned this at the start. There was as we moved towards the cloud over the last few years, I think there was a bit of a misapprehension, or that once I'm in the cloud, I don't need to back up anymore. We absolutely do. So again, this is something Euan's got a bit more knowledge on than me, so I'm going to pass over to him just to talk about that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, so this backup isn't anything new. It's been around for a long time, but we still see is a major gap, a red flag in a lot of IT operations posture. So first question is to ask, do you have a backup? If so, is it monitored for success, no results, and failures? So are you is somebody checking what's happening with your backups? So you might think that one is in place, but how do you know that it's actually working? And a lot of people take that for granted. And it's something I would make sure to scrutinize, because the third component to this question is, when was it last tested? So backups are only as good as their last test. And that's a kind of a familiar saying within the industry. You could have a backup for years and years and years, which is great, but when was the last time you actually tested to make sure that you could recover from that? Because this is the Alamo. The backup is the last line of defense. Whether you've been compromised, you've had a breach, your data's been compromised, it's either been deleted or it's been encrypted with ransomware. If you don't have that data, is it going to stop you to be able to operate? And 99 times out of 100, it is. A lot of businesses can't survive without the data that they've got. So having a good backup solution is more important than probably any other slide we've talked about today. And it's just worth considering. If something was to happen tomorrow, have you got the resilience there in place? With all the different layers that are there in terms of security, have you got something there that will save the day in terms of the backup?
And we're starting to run out of time, but again, we're talking about Office 365. We're talking about SharePoint, OneDrive, all these applications that the majority of businesses use. We're talking about Google Email and Google Drive as well, if you use it. All these applications that most businesses use, almost all of them, need to be backed up, and they need to be backed up in a place other than the vendor that you're buying them from. So don't back up your Microsoft 365 data with Microsoft, back it up somewhere else. And it means that when somebody does delete something from the Microsoft environment and they don't realize for 4 months, and by which point any retention you might have had with Microsoft is gone, you can recover it. And this does happen. It is something that we have requests for, and it saved the bacon of many an employee over the last few years. Right, last slide. We are going to talk about our approach to our cybersecurity bundles, if you like. So we've got our cybersecurity standard bundle. So this is the package of services that we believe is a baseline for any company that we provide support for. Now, not every company takes on every one of these services, but this provides the protection that helps cover all the threats we've talked about in the last 16 slides prior to this one. Significantly reduces the chance of falling victim to cybercrime through all the various components there. I'm not going to talk about all of them individually. Many companies, when we go to them with these, especially maybe companies who've been with us for a number of years, we start them off in the cybersecurity basic plan, because that gives them enough to get past cyber essentials and give that basic level of protection. But it still has areas of exposure within the business, and for us doesn't give them really that full coverage that they should really have to reduce the risk enough. And then we have our advanced pack. We have a lot of industries have got compliance standards that companies within them have to meet. Often that's financial services in particular. So there's a whole lot of additional layers of defense that we have got in this particular plan, that has 24/7 round the clock monitoring on Office 365, for example. Somebody logs in from the other side of the world from a company, and that's unusual behavior. And Euan talked about artificial intelligence, machine learning before. That's what these more expensive and additional services will pick up and you get notified. IT team gets notified straight away. So have a look at these on our. You can find these on our website. I see it's 4 minutes to 3, so I haven't left a huge amount of time for questions and answers. So apologies for that. However, if anyone does have any questions that they haven't had a chance to ask just now, then please email us afterwards. Claire will be in touch with a recording of the slides if anyone wants to hear it back or share it with friends or colleagues. But if you have any questions at all, please contact us through Claire in response to our email, and we'd be happy to answer just straightforward questions about how you can protect yourself or anything from these slides, or if you're looking for more business advice or security advice about what you're doing. Again, more than happy to share that with you. And I think that's probably a wrap. Anything from yourself, Euan, just to finish off?
No, like I said, like you mentioned, obviously we've got our 3 different packages for cybersecurity. Happy to talk to anybody about those. We've designed those to kind of accommodate kind of all budgets, starting from the basic all the way up to advanced. The basic is obviously the first stepping stone to address the most common issues, and obviously the further higher we go up on the level of security package we've got, the more risk that gets reduced. So yeah, we're happy to talk to anybody about those packages in a bit more detail to figure out what they do. It's something we're working actively on with a lot of our customers just now, which is great. But yeah, happy to answer any questions further on any of those to figure out what they can do for their business.